Welcome to Disambiguation. I'm your host, Michael Fauscette. Each week, we interview experts in artificial intelligence, generative AI, and business automation to help business leaders understand how to use these tools for the biggest business impact. Welcome to this week's episode of Disambiguation. If you saw last week, we went through our agentic AI trends for 2026. If you haven't seen that, you should check it out. It's interesting, I think. Or I hope. And so this week, we're going to take a look at our second set of predictions and trends for next year, and that's around customer experience. We just published this week the customer experience trends for 2026 report. You can get that on the report section of the Arian Research website if you want to take a look. There's also a presentation. You might like the presentation version. It's considerably more succinct than the somewhat wordy report, although I don't know. I think the report's interesting. All right, so I want to walk you through, what's happening versus, what's hype for next year, because, here's the thing. We're not talking about incremental improvements, right? We're really talking about and watching AI systems, evolve from tools into hybrid workforces, into digital workers. And, if you watch the show, I wrote a book recently, Building the Digital Workforce, which talks about that and how, we believe that that's where we're moving. And so when we're talking about AI and its impact on customer experience, it really is that evolution from thinking of them as tools into, autonomy, goal-based agents that make decisions, collaborate with humans, and really, they are a hybrid workforce, a workforce partner. So I structured this episode around a framework, and if you saw last week's episode, there's a three-tier framework that we use for the trends this year, and going forward. I'm fond of it, and I think we'll continue this. But it does help you think about the trends in a different light, and think about when and how much impact they might have. Tier one, inevitable, already gaining momentum, mainstream adoption in 2026. Tier two are more the trends that are emerging, but they are transformational. They're positioned for early majority adoption through 2027. And then tier three are, still on the horizon. They're dependent on, additional standards that are being developed and infrastructure maturity, technology maturity. But they give us a glimpse of what, where all this is leading, or at least maybe. All right, so in a moment, I'm going to show you, just like last week, I'm going to show you a 7-minute overview, about a 7-minute overview video that I created. I uploaded the report into Google's Notebook LM, and had it generate this video, and also an audio file, which you can listen to on the site if you're interested. It does a conversation around the report that I think is useful, and it's a good way to get an overview. And the video, I think, does a good job of explaining the three-tier structure. So I'll let it, go into that. And then once we've watched the video, I'll come back and we'll dig into some of the trends that I think are really interesting. But again, I would, encourage you to take a look at the full report if it's something that, you're interested in CX strategy and kind of where customer experience is going over the next few years. But I really think that, some of these trends are going to be very impactful for next year and beyond. So let's start the video.
So let's talk about the future, and I mean the near future. By 2026, the way you interact with basically every brand is going to be fundamentally different. And look, we're not just talking about chatbots that are a little less frustrating. We are talking about a complete and total paradigm shift in customer experience. And it's all being driven by this powerful new form of AI. So let's break down what's coming.
Picture this. It's 3:47 in the morning and an AI agent, let's call her Maya, is quietly preventing a massive customer service crisis before anyone has even had their first sip of coffee. Now, this isn't some scene from a sci-fi movie. This is the new reality of customer experience. And this story, Maya's story, is the perfect way to kick off our deep dive into this massive shift.
So that story about Maya, It's not just a cool anecdote. It's really a glimpse into a huge paradigm shift. We're moving away from AI that just, answers basic questions to AI that actually anticipates our needs, solves complex problems, and orchestrates entire customer journeys, a lot of the time completely on its own.
All right, that brings up the big question, right? What is this technology? What makes an AI like Maya so different from the chatbots we're all, let's be honest, kind of tired of? This brings us right to the core concept, the agentic customer experience.
Okay, so here's the absolute game changer. Agentic AI isn't just following a script or decision tree. You give it a goal, a mission, like make this customer happy or resolve this issue, and then it figures out, on its own, the best way to achieve that goal. It observes, it decides, it acts, and then it learns from the outcome. That goal-oriented autonomy is what makes this such a monumental leap forward. Now, to get our heads around this, the report breaks it down into a super helpful 3-tier framework. Think of it as our roadmap for this explainer. It helps us see what's already happening, what's coming up really fast, and what's just over the horizon. Let's start with what's pretty much inevitable.
All right, let's dive into Tier 1. And I want to be super clear here. These aren't just pie-in-the-sky predictions. This stuff is happening right now. The most forward-thinking companies are already implementing these ideas. These are the trends you absolutely, positively have to have on your radar. First up in the inevitable category is a solution to something that drives all of us crazy. You know that feeling when you have to repeat your story to 5 different customer service agents? Yeah, that. The solution is something called customer memory systems. What we're talking about is getting rid of what the pros call a stateless experience. Basically, system amnesia, where every conversation starts from zero. Instead, these new systems have a persistent memory. This is huge. It turns a clunky assistant into, well, a digital partner who actually knows you. They remember your history, your preferences, and that dramatically boosts satisfaction and your long-term value as a customer. Okay, next up is a trend that finally settles that old debate. Is it robots or is it humans? The answer? It's both. Together. The future isn't one or the other, it's a really sophisticated blend of the two.
So think about the old way, right? It's that awful, rigid handoff where the bot just gives up and says, let me get you a human, it's clunky. The new way is all about dynamic collaboration. It's a real partnership. The AI handles all the routine, tedious stuff, which frees up the human agents to focus on what we do best: empathy, complex judgment, and creative problem solving. This completely reshapes the workforce, creating brand new roles like AI supervisor or empathy specialist. Okay, so if Tier 1 was about fixing the present with better memory and teamwork, Tier 2 is where we start to see some seriously transformational stuff. These are the trends that are going to hit in the next couple of years, and for the companies that get them right, they're going to be a massive competitive advantage. You know how companies look at customer journey maps, maybe once a quarter in some big meeting? Yeah, forget that. The emerging trend is to have AI systems do it continuously, in real time. We're talking 24/7.
What this means is the customer journey stops being this static PDF and becomes a living, breathing thing that's always improving itself. The AI is constantly running little experiments, testing different approaches, and optimizing every single step based on live feedback. The impact is just enormous. Human teams go from being designers to being strategic overseers of these incredibly powerful, self-tuning loops, which can drive conversion rates way, way higher.
All right, let's look over the horizon. Tier 3. This is where things start to feel a little bit like science fiction. But the key is, it's all grounded in tech that's actually being developed right now. This is a real glimpse of what's coming after 2027.
So, get ready for this one. Imagine if a brand wasn't just a logo and a color scheme. What if it was an actual personality you could talk to? Well, they could pick up on your mood, your frustration, your excitement, and adapt its response in real time.
This is the big idea. AI agents that literally embody a brand's personality to give you these super empathetic, hyper-personalized interactions. The upside for creating brand loyalty is, well, it's off the charts. But, and this is a huge but, it opens up a whole can of worms, ethically speaking. How do we make sure it's authentic? Where do you draw the line between helpful personalization and creepy manipulation? These are the really tough questions the industry is going to have to figure out, and very carefully. Okay, so we've seen what's now, what's next, and what's way out there. That's great, but the real question is, what do you do about it? How do you actually get ready for this agency era? Well, the report doesn't just point out the future, it gives us a clear strategy. Well, the report gives us a playbook, broken down into 5 key pillars. Think of this as your to-do list. First, you've got to orchestrate. Get a central system so all your agents can work together. Second, govern. Build the rules and safety rails in from day one, not as an afterthought. Third, remember. Invest in those memory systems we talked about. They are the foundation. Fourth, redesign roles. Get your human team ready for this new world of collaborating with AI. And finally, number 5, experiment. You have to build a culture that is constantly testing, learning, and adapting. That is the playbook.
And really, it all boils down to this one final question. This isn't a hypothetical anymore. This shift is happening. The market is being reshaped as we speak. Customer expectations are changing forever. So the only thing left to ask is, are you going to be an architect of that future, or are you just going to be forced to react to it? Thanks for tuning in.
All right. So hopefully you enjoyed that video. It's definitely interesting overview, and I think covered a lot of the parts of it very effectively. So let's jump in. Now that you've got the framework and you've seen the overview of some of the trends, let's talk about the ones, about what it actually means. And then I want to focus on a few of the trends, 6 to be exact, 6 trends that I think will have the most profound impact. And more importantly, how they connect to create something bigger than just any single trend. Now, in the video, he talked about the memory revolution. And if you looked at the agentic trends, you'll see that's also one of those tier one trends. And I think a very important one. And if you use, public models, you probably notice that they, like Claude or ChatGPT or Perplexity, they've all moved down this path as well. Persistent memory, and there's a big advantage to that. Now, if you think about, what's the most important enabler across everything that we're discussing, memory systems? Well, right now, AI interactions are like talking to somebody with amnesia, right? If you think traditional chatbots and the annoyance that every conversation starts over from zero. Now, that's a terrible customer experience. You explain your preferences, your context, your history, and then the next time you interact, got to go do it again. So that's not just annoying to customers. It's a huge limitation in what the systems can actually do. So customer memory systems, agentic systems that have persistent memory are in tier one. I think they're inevitable and very high impact. And it really does, change that experience. The persistent memory architecture lets agents and applications recall past interactions, preferences, and outcomes. So, you're seeing OpenAI build that feature into ChatGPT, as I mentioned. Anthropic is literally an hour ago. I clicked the approve using memory in my Claude app, because it is very useful. Salesforce Customer 360 Data 360 is, becoming a memory layer for their entire platform. If saw some of Dreamforce or you saw some of my coverage of Dreamforce, that's from an enterprise perspective, that's a very important piece of the way these systems need to work. So, here's why it matters. And it matters more than it might seem, I think. Memory turns AI from an assistant into a relationship partner or a coworker. Think about your best customer service experience. It happened when the person helping you actually knew your history, understood your preferences, and could pick up where the last conversation left off. Now, that continuity is what builds trust and loyalty. The business impact is measurable. Organizations implementing these systems are seeing an increase in first contact resolution rates because the agents don't need to regather information. Customer lifetime value goes up because experiences feel personalized rather than generic. And critically, this enables all other trends that we're going to discuss, because without the memory, you can't solve the orchestration, personalization, collaboration between agents and between agents and humans. So a critical part of it. So that brings us to what might be the biggest, architectural shift. And we if you look at the agentic predictions, you'll see this is a big part of that as well. The agentic CX orchestration and governance platform. So you think about this from an agentic perspective. It's how do I orchestrate, coordinate, govern manage ethics, manage trust, all those things, they all need to be wrapped up into the new platform layer that will, be available from a CX perspective. Very, very important. For decades, customer experience has been, fragmented across systems, across data. You have CRM for marketing. In fact, CDP's customer data platforms were mostly marketing up until the last couple of years. Your service desk is separate. Your commerce platform's different, all operating in silos. Customers can see that fragmentation every time they have to repeat information, or when the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. So what we're seeing now is this emergence of the orchestration layer that don't just connect these systems, they actually coordinate agents, data, and workflows across every touch point. Salesforce, is positioning Agentforce this way. Microsoft's building similar capabilities into Copilot Studio. Oracle has Fusion CX AI. So you're seeing the enterprise companies move down this path quickly. But here's what's really important though. It elevates this to 5-star impact rating. These platforms are embedding governance directly into the architecture, governance by design. And rather than governance as an afterthought, when we think about these systems, we really do have to change the paradigm, the way we think about governance and ethics. That has to be built in from the beginning. When autonomous agents are making decisions and taking actions, you need ethical controls, compliance frameworks, transparency, auditability. All those things have to be built into the foundation. The EU AI Act already forces this conversation. Organizations need dashboards that show what their agents are doing. They why they're making decisions, how they intervene when something goes wrong. This isn't just about technology; it's about trust. And trust is the underlying piece to the successful deployment of this hybrid workforce. What we're really talking about here is the emergence of this new layer in the enterprise stack. It sits above your applications and coordinates everything, or maybe it sits under your applications and coordinates everything. Your customers don't interact with Salesforce or Zendesk or Oracle, whatever anymore. They interact with an orchestrated experience that pulls from those systems to intelligently base, own the context, know the intent, know the history, so that they can have a meaningful interaction. Very important. And then, the hybrid workforce model, I've hinted at this a few times or talked about it a few times. And, we just published a book, Building a Digital Workforce, about it. I think it's extremely important concept. Uh, you know, think about humans, because there's a lot of anxiety right now around AI replacing them. You have to think about this differently. What we're really seeing is a good bit more nuance than just, gee, the bots are taking over, or the AI is taking over, and I don't have a job. Sometimes that may be true, or maybe I have to learn new skills. But more interestingly, this hybrid human agent service model is in fact where we see this going quickly, and it's the most effective way to manage it, right? The early narrative around AI automation was kind of binary, right? It was either a human or it was AI. Now it's much more complex, and that's not really how work happened anyway, right? The frontier is dynamic collaboration, where the system intelligently determines what level of human involvement makes sense for each situation based on stakes, uncertainty, emotional context, history, transaction volume, all those things, right? So here's a concrete example from our research. Imagine a customer service interaction. An agent handles an initial inquiry about order status. That's straightforward. But mid conversation, the sentiment analysis detects rising frustration in the customer's language. The system then proactively brings in a human representative, provides them with a complete interaction summary, and suggests approaches based on similar cases. The human handles the emotionally sensitive part of the conversation, while the agent continues to fetch information, process transactions in the background. After resolution, the human's feedback improves the agent's ability to handle similar situations independently next time. This is what adaptive autonomy looks like. The system learns what tasks it can handle reliably and which require human judgment. It adjusts its autonomy level based on the time of day, workload, complexity, type of interaction, et cetera. The organization implications are huge. We're going to see new roles emerge, agent supervisors who oversee digital workers or hybrid workforce, AI trainers to improve agent performance, hybrid team managers who optimize the mix of human and agent resources. This requires uh, rethinking performance metrics and the way we manage to the goals and to success against those goals, management structures, how do we manage a hybrid workforce, and even how we budget, for workforce capacity. So the next one that I want to call out is a workforce workflow, excuse me, centered or centric revolution, and I talked about this some last week in the episode, and also when in the trends report, the agentic trends report. But if you tie these together, what I think is most architecturally significant, from a trend perspective anyway, is a shift from the typical application-centric enterprise that we've seen for a very long time to a workflow-centric enterprise architecture. So this one's tier two. It's emerging. It's transformational, but it's not quite ready for prime time yet. And here's why it matters. For decades, work has been organized around applications. You log into Salesforce to update a deal. You switch to Oracle to check inventory. You jump to Workday for HR stuff. Each application is a silo, and every boundary between systems is a point of friction, delay, and potential error. AI accelerates this fundamental shift away from this model. Instead of organizations around organizing, that's easy for you to say, organizing around applications, organizations are redesigned around the workflow itself, the natural flow of business processes. Agents operate seamlessly at this workflow level because they don't need to use applications like humans do. They interact through APIs, MCP, A to A, different types of ways to integrate tools, data integrations, pulling what they need from wherever it lives, federated data, so I don't have to move it. They can just go get it when I need it. This architectural evolution typically goes through four stages. First, you build a data fabric that provides unified access across systems. Secondly, you implement an agent layer that can operate on that data. Third, you add workflow orchestration that coordinates human and agent activities. Fourth, you layer on governance that enforces policies and compliance. New roles are emerging that support this, right? So workflow architects who design end-to-end processes, digital workforce orchestration or orchestrators who manage the mix of resources. Roles require skills cross traditional boundaries, understanding business processes, system capabilities, data architecture, agent behavior, all at once. By late 2027, we expect leading enterprises to have completed this transition for core business processes. This doesn't mean eliminating applications. Systems of record still matter, but work organized around flows rather than applications. Users interact with workflow interfaces that present contextually relevant information, pulling from multiple systems without forcing you to navigate application boundaries. Maybe it looks something like Slack or Microsoft Teams, one of those front end collaborative workforce applications that could tie all this together. Now, if you think of tier three, let me close out, with a couple of these tier three trends because I think yes, they're not here yet, but they are coming, or at least I believe they're coming, and some of them are pretty exciting. Right, they're grounded in technical feasibility. Emotionally adaptive brand agents, for example, and agent to agent customer service networks. Emotionally adaptive brand agents are exactly what they sound like: AI personas with emotional awareness that adjust tone and affect dynamically. We're seeing early signals from companies like Soul Machines, Synthesia, conversational avatars, character AI, enterprise pilots. So we're seeing these capabilities already. This is high risk, high reward, though. Done well, it builds deep emotional resonance and loyalty. Done poorly, it crosses into the uncanny valley and raises serious authenticity and ethics questions. But agent to agent customer service networks, this is where it gets really interesting. Imagine a future where you have a personal AI agent that handles customer service on your behalf. Your agent contacts a company's agent. They negotiate resolution, handle the transaction, AI, all through shared protocols, A to A or whatever the standard may be. No humans involved unless necessary. The signals are real. Entropic's MCP, Model Context Protocol, or Lang Chang's Agent Protocol, early pilots of decentralized service systems, they're there. And they create frictionless, autonomous customer experience ecosystems. But it also requires standards, infrastructure maturity, and trust frameworks that don't exist today. That's why it's tier three. But of these trends, they have a five-star impact rating because if they happen, they completely redefine customer relationships. They also have a lower likelihood ranging in the near term because the technical and social infrastructure just isn't ready yet. So here's my synthesis of all this. We're not talking about isolated trends. We're watching the emergence of an integrated agent ecosystem where memory enables personalization, orchestration coordinates complexity, hybrid models balance automation and empathy, and workflow centric architecture makes it all practical. The organizations that understand this, that see the connection between trends rather than treating them as separate initiatives, those are the ones that'll gain genuine competitive advantage over the next 18 months. The question isn't whether this is coming. The question is whether you're preparing your organization for a world where AI agents are genuinely workforce partners, where workflows span systems seamlessly, and where customer experience is orchestrated rather than fragmented. That's what 2026 looks like. And honestly, I think that we're underestimating how fast this is going to move. And when I look across these 12 trends, the through line's clear. Agentic AI isn't just another tech cycle, it's a structural shift in how we build, manage, and trust digital systems. Also, how work gets done. The enterprise of 2026 will operate less like a set of applications and more like an ecosystem of integrated collaborators, some human, some digital, all orchestrated around shared outcomes. If you'd like to explore the full trends report, you can find that on the arianresearch.com site. Put the link in the show notes as well. And if you're interested in how to prepare your organization for this shift, check out the book, Building the Digital Workforce. It's a practical guide to leading in the age of intelligent agents. And that's all the time we have today. So thank you very much for listening, watching, and hopefully you'll join us next week. And that's the show for this week. Thank you all for joining us. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the show. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a review to help others find us. For more research on AI and other software, check out arianresearch.com. If you're an expert in AI, generative AI, or business automation, either as a provider or an end user, email your information to disambiguation@arianresearch.com. Don't forget to join us next week. Disambiguation is an Arian Research production. I'm Michael Fauscette, and this is the Disambiguation Podcast.